Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Saturday HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. Please sit back, relax, and join Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick for an hour of entertaining information about HOAs and HOA law.
Good morning, Sacramento. We're back in studio today. It's the Saturday HOA Brunch. All we do is talk about homeowners associations, and we have a special guest today. We'll get to him shortly, but I always like to get the forecast out of the way. Mr. Epstein, you're looking outside.
Let me look outside and see how the weather is. It looks quite balmy today.
There's a light breeze, but it's going to be balmy. The state fair's going on across the street. The Omni seminar's going on today. It's a busy, busy day in Sacramento.
Yeah, we're Angius&Terry. We're community association attorneys. We represent community associations. Our show is about community association law and all the different aspects of that to help board members become better board members.
Right, or educate maybe some potential buyers that want to live in the right HOA.
Absolutely, yeah. Get your governing documents before you actually sign on the dotted line. Remember our caller last week?
Matt.
Boy, what a story.
Yeah. Oh, so what are some of the things we've talked about? We've talked about some of the industry organizations, CAI, Community Associations Institute,
Rules,
CACM.
internal dispute resolution, conflict of interest, reserve studies. We talk about it all.
Lobbying. We had Skip Dom, the CLAC representative, in studio. And what's the number that they can call if they have any questions for us, Bianna?
Well, I'm back, everyone. The Three Musketeers are reunited, but we want to hear from our callers. Call us at 888-923-1380, KTKZ, The Answer. We'll answer your questions, tell us about your experiences in community associations, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. It's the Saturday HOA Brunch. But what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we'll be talking about insurance and case law regarding insurance coverage for associations.
Well, that, I guess, brings us to the man himself, Garth Leone. How are you doing today, Garth? Thanks for waking up early and coming down to the studios to join us.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's a real honor and a privilege to be on the #1 Community Association Talk Radio show.
We appreciate that.
What's the name of your company, Garth?
The name of my company is Community Association Insurance Solutions.
And how can someone get in contact with you? How can a board member get in contact with you? Do you have a telephone number? Do you have a website, internet?
Yeah, we've got a website. The best approach is to go through guys like one of your sponsors, Rick Russo Insurance. He's an appointed agent of ours, so we're more of a wholesaler and an actual carrier, and so we distribute our products through guys like that. So any of your local insurance agents can get in touch with us.
Well, we know you're in tune with insurance now, Garth, and your company works throughout the nation assisting these brokers with community associations. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history in the industry?
Well, I started in about 1992, and I realized about 3 months into the industry that it's really the most interesting social experiment of modern time is what community association living is. It's sort of the clash of rugged individualism and property owner rights that is the fully Americana, what I call castleitis, and behavior modification and architectural uniformity that is community association living. So it's fascinating. I've been honored and privileged to be a part of the industry for a long time. And I started on the insurance side of things, just what's called a retail insurance agent. I specialized in community associations, did placement for about 850 associations, and had offices in California and Nevada. And then in 2005, I went into wholesale to develop the product that we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then last year, we actually formed our own insurance company behind the wholesale operation. So I've sort of progressed all the way from being a retail sales guy to actually being one of the owners of an insurance company that underwrites the product. So,
and so in addition to doing that, you also teach with respect to community associations?
I do. I got a really interesting lesson on my first meeting with the manager. I basically showed up and was ready to talk about coverage, and she asked me a question. So what do you know about community associations? I'm like, well, I know they need insurance. And she said, well, what do you know about me as a community association manager? Well, I know you manage stuff, right? So basically, she asked me to leave the meeting. I did a little tribute to her at National this year at an Ignite talk, but I called the tribute the manager that made me, because that made me really understand. It was much more about the industry. I needed to know more about the industry, and that sort of got me hooked on getting into learning about it, and then, of course, teaching about it as well. So.
Yeah, it's easy to get hooked on community associations when you work in the industry. Just some really great people. We're here with Garth Leone with Community Association Insurance Solutions. And so you just said every association has exposure, right? Liability exposure, right, Garth?
Yep, they do. And today we're talking about workers' compensation. The exposure of general liability and property are pretty well known, and most documents require that kind of insurance. Workers' compensation, which is the product that we developed, started in 2006. Doing some national education, I was around other agents like myself that were highly specialized, and none of us could get access to this product. And it's one of those products where there's a 100% need rate and probably a 15% take rate. And the basic premise is employees are not. Every association should have a workers' compensation policy because they have the exposure. But most folks think that we have no employees, so we don't need workers' comp. So that's kind of the disconnect.
Oh, wow. You could not have put it better. So the issue is this. So most community associations, they do not have any employees. Workers' compensation insurance is for employees. So the big question is, why should an association have workers' compensation insurance? So there's different aspects of that. And in particular, one of them is, how about we start with number 2 first? Just get that one out of the way. Volunteers, right?
Yeah, so every association is run by volunteers. I don't know, Brad. I've never seen a set of documents that said the president shall preside for the sum of $40,000 a year and be a paid employee of the association. Haven't seen that set of documents yet, have you?
You know how many volunteer board members there are nationally? Over 2.3 million.
I was going to guess about 2.3 million was going to be my guess.
He knows, of course. And so when Garth says documents, we're talking. What are we talking about, Jonathan? Documents for an association?
All those funky acronyms that people tune in and go, "Oh, CC&Rs." Can someone define that? And Viana, that's your favorite one to express.
Yeah, I love the CC&R. So when we're talking about governing documents, we're talking about the documents that sort of set out how the association should be governed. It's the bylaws, the CC&Rs, which is the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. We have the articles of incorporation, rules, guidelines, and things of that sort.
That's it, exactly. So those documents in particular, and we'll focus on the CC&Rs. The CC&Rs will say the association must get particular insurance coverage. And typically, the CC&Rs will give a choice when it comes to workers' compensation insurance for associations. So we have the volunteers, and when we're talking about a volunteer, we're talking about committee members, right?
Yep, board members, committee members, anybody working at the direction of the board of directors in an official capacity. And since every association is required to be run, and I use the term run loosely, not to offend the community association managers, but there's an obligation that they're governing the business of the association. And when they're doing that, they're performing a work-related service. So my opinion has always been, if they are injured during the course of working for the association, that should be treated like any other work-related injury. And that's why we developed the voluntary compensation coverage. It allows us to treat those injuries as though they are a work-related injury. The benefit to the injured party is they're not staring at things like a $2,500 deductible for an emergency room visit for a broken ankle.
Exactly. So we're talking about workers' compensation insurance. This is in addition to the general liability policy that association has. And most associations are managed by management companies. The management companies have insurance too, but that's not enough. It's important that associations have the workers' compensation insurance for their volunteers, which are the directors and the committee members. A lot of committee members nowadays, they'll do more than just organize social events. They'll really get into it. I know some associations, especially active adult communities, they have a lot of committees, right?
They do, and most insurance companies sort of run from trying to pay losses, and we're actually a carrier that says, those injuries ought to be paid by our policy. That's what it's there for. After all, they are called community associations, so we like the volunteer activity and lots of things going on, lots of people helping out. We're okay insuring the exposure that comes with that.
Oh, kudos to your company. Kudos to your company, Community Association Insurance Solutions, because a lot of insurance companies do run from liability.
Yeah, so when we get back from the break, we're going to continue to discuss community associations with a nationally recognized figure, Garth Leone. And there's a big case you want to talk about, right, Epstein?
That's right. So we'll get into that case. That's going to be talking about employees of uninsured contractors who were injured at the association.
Great. And Viana, we're so happy she's back.
Hi, this is Rick Russo, owner of Russo Insurance Agency and Financial Services. We proudly serve Granite Bay, Roseville, Rockland, Sacramento, Lake Tahoe, and the surrounding areas. At Russo Insurance Agency, we like to say, get to know us before you need us. Our insurance agency is built on relationships and trust. If you want to be certain that your most valuable assets are insured correctly, allow us to give you more than just a 15-minute quote. For all your commercial, home, auto, and life insurance needs, call us today at 916-791-1901. That's 916-791-1901 or online at rickrussoinsurance.com. That's rickrussoinsurance.com. Thank you.
If your community association has a good relationship with their current management company, you can stop listening. However, if you are struggling with your current service provider, we'd love to talk with you to see if Omni Community Management would be a good fit. Transparency, education, communication, and trust are just 4 of the qualities that set Omni apart. This is Rolf Crocker, CEO of Omni. Call us at 916-965-8964. That's 916-965-8964. Online at omni-mgt.com. That's omni-mgt.com. Omni Community Management, your friend in the community association management industry for over 20 years.
Have you ever heard of the saying, a person's home is their castle? Of course you have. But sometimes a construction defect can turn your castle into a catastrophe. If this happens to you, you need proper and professional representation. You need Angius&Terry, LLP. For over 30 years, the attorneys at Angius&Terry have been effectively serving homeowners and community associations, recovering more than $500 million on behalf of their clients. Angius&Terry strives to ensure that your construction defect claims are prosecuted in an aggressive and cost-effective manner. Angius&Terry will also continue to work with homeowners and community associations after the construction defect claims are concluded to make sure that the money received from builders is spent wisely and that your interests are protected during the repair process. Don't let a construction defect turn your castle into a catastrophe. Call Angius&Terry LLP today at 916-567-1400. That's 916-567-1400. Online at angius-terry.com. Angius&Terry LLP.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry LLP. And now your hosts Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Hey, we're back. The Saturday HOA Brunch. You can look us up on Facebook, search the Saturday HOA Brunch, or you can give us a call with a question. The best number to reach us, 888-923-1380. The balminess outside's turned into a breeze, it looks like, as we look out over Highway 80. And you know what we like to do here? We like to thank our supporters.
Sure, we love our listeners, but we love our sponsors. We want to thank Rick Russo Insurance Agency. They specialize in commercial home, auto, life, and health insurance. They have the privilege of serving the insurance needs for thousands of families and hundreds of community associations through California, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, and Utah. The Rick Russo Insurance Agency business model is built on relationships and trust.
And we'd like to also thank the Browning Reserve Group, who is a generous sponsor. Reserve studies are essential to the strategic planning of any community. They provide information about communities that are increasingly complex, and reserve studies can be difficult to understand. That's why the Browning Reserve Group has created a sophisticated system that produces clear, easy-to-understand reports that community leaders use to achieve alignment on long-term plans for maintaining, enhancing, and protecting their communities. So you need reserve study help? Call the Browning Reserve Group.
Excellent. So we were talking about volunteer workers for associations. These are board members and committee members. And the associations, they may be required to treat any injuries as work-related. Workers' compensation insurance for that purpose. Okay, so now we're going to get into the other interesting aspect, and that is an association. They retain a contractor who has employees and does work for the association. And we're going to revolve our conversation around a case called Hyman v. Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. Before that, we're going to get into losses paid by the National Workers' Compensation Program. Garth, we talked about that offline, so go ahead and elaborate on that.
Yeah, we were talking about the exposure of the volunteer worker as it relates to workers' compensation, and
Garth, can you hang on a minute?
Sure.
We have a caller, so let's introduce our caller. We got people to call in, so let's see who's on the line. Jonathan?
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah.
May we ask who's calling?
Larry.
Oh, I recognize this voice. What are you doing out of bed this early?
Yeah, good question. I had to clean my garage.
Oh, that sounds like a good plan on a Saturday
Great
morning.
to hear from you, Larry.
So what's
I'm
up?
sorry? Well, I have a question for Garth.
Oh, great.
I was just made aware of a manager who's soliciting business, and he's a sole proprietor. He works out of his house and has no other employees. He does everything himself, and his son actually is a handyman and works on the association's, various little projects, changing light bulbs, fixing locks, that kind of thing. Is he covered by the associations? Is both the manager and his son covered by the associations?
Okay, let's make sure we understand
that.
Understand that fantastic fact pattern, Larry. So we have a sole proprietor person running an association, community association business. Their son is kind of assisting the manager in running around changing light bulbs and whatnot. And Garth,
right.
what do you think of that?
Well, that's a great point. That's a great call, Larry, and it's probably one of the top questions we get around the service provider issue. And the way we deal with it at the carrier level is if an individual is not subject to the act on their own, and this varies by state because each state sort of has a different interpretation of this labor code piece that drives this exposure. But for example, a sole proprietor, if you take the son out of the equation and it's just the manager, in this state, that manager does not have to have coverage for himself, and he is not subject to the act. So if he tries
and that's the Workers' Compensation Act, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So if he tries to claim a workers' compensation loss against that community association, the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board is more than likely going to say he's not eligible for coverage because he's not eligible under the act. The complication is when you add the son that is the handyman and any level of handyman. If that individual is an employee of that management company, then technically the management company is in violation of the act in terms of their obligation to provide coverage for that individual, unless that individual is also an owner. So if that is a partnership and it's a father-son partnership, they can both be excluded from the act, and an injury that they receive while working on behalf of the association would not impact the association's coverage.
Wow. You know, the caller, he hung up. He would probably had to get back to his honey-do list. But we appreciate the call from Larry Pottist, a great guest of our show. In the past, he was on. He works for Associa. And Larry, just thanks a lot for calling in. We appreciate the support.
Okay, so back to recent losses paid by the only national workers' compensation program built specifically for condominiums and community associations. Go ahead, Garth.
Yeah, so we jumped right into the vendor issue, which is a critical one. We're going to get a case on that. Before we go there, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these work-related injuries. A couple of my favorites. The Community Association of Chicago decided they would save $180 a month on a building maintenance agreement by having the president of the association become the building maintenance guy. And
that's always a good idea.
Actually, I like the idea, to tell you the truth. But he put himself through college. A part of the way he put himself through college as a handyman. He says, "Hey, I'm a handyman. We can save the money. I'll do it." So he goes up to change a light bulb on a 14-foot ladder, falls off the ladder, breaks his knee over the ladder on his fall, is in the hospital for 5 days, and it ends up being a $75,000 loss. Now, if that individual has personal health insurance, which they probably do through work, he's got deductibles, he's got co-pays, he's got all kinds of expense going at it. That truly is a work-related injury. He stepped up. It's an official motion. It's an official function of the board of directors. They've asked him to do it. He's putting the effort in. He's hurt. We're taking care of that work-related injury. So that's a pretty good example of it. One of my other favorite examples is a board member on a property walk with the property manager. They're rolling around in the golf cart, and the board president gets out of the golf cart, and the golf cart runs over the board president's ankle, and it's a $25,000 injury. Now, it doesn't say so in the official claim, but I'm guessing the manager was driving. That's just my guess on that situation. So, but these injuries do happen, and we're happy to take care of them. And every association should have that approach to take care of those work-related injuries.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to roll right into the Hyman v. California Workers' Compensation Appeals Board court case. This is a California appellate court case. It's 2007, And a lot of board members ask me, what exactly is the effect of California court cases? So you have, of course, small claims cases. They have no precedential value at all. They're just something to know in your local areas how the courts may be acting about particular subjects. You have trial courts. These are the superior courts, trial courts, and they don't have any precedential value also, but they do give you a better idea how the courts act. The precedential value are those when they are appealed from the trials court up to the California Court of Appeals. Any case can be appealed from trial court, and the Court of Appeals must accept that and must go ahead and render a decision on any appeals court case.
How many times can you appeal?
And so you can appeal in different ways. You can appeal actually during a case, and they have these different things called writs. Writs can go up. But in essence...
Like the cracker, you mean? Or
something like that, Garth, exactly. And they will be appealed up in the California Court of Appeals. They must go ahead and render a decision. However, not all decisions that they render are what's called published. Most of them are non-published. There aren't that many California court cases that are appealed that are published in California about community associations. There's not that many community associations court cases in the appellate courts that are published. When they're published, they are precedent. That means that a trial court must follow that. The Supremes, the California Supreme Court, anyone can appeal to the California Supreme Court. However, the California Supreme Court, they don't have to accept any cases they don't want. They pick and choose. So if a California court case does go all the way up to the California Supreme Court, and it is published, it is about community associations, boy, we'll certainly hear about it. There's the Narstead case, there's the Lambden case, there's a couple others that are big cases. However, most cases like this one is just a California appeals court case, the Hyman case. And so this one is interesting. It came out in 2007. This one I think it changed the community association industry. I think this is one of the pivot points where community associations said we have to get workers' compensation. Most associations have workers' compensation insurance. Don't you think, Garth? And also, you go nationwide. What's your experience with that before we get into the case?
Yeah, unfortunately, the take rate of the product is in states where it's really prolific, it might be hovering around 45 or 50%. In states where it's not as prevalent, there's take rates as low as 10, 12%. So unfortunately, almost every association that has direct employees, meaning the manager is an employee of the association, they're covered. They have this coverage. They have to by their local state, right? But most associations do not have direct employees, so they think that they're not subject to the act. They don't have the exposure, and they don't have to have coverage, so they don't spend the money to do it. And that's changed dramatically in part as a result of this case. This case is spread throughout the country, and it sort of highlights the need for the coverage for that uninsured, the injured employee of an uninsured contractor. So,
yeah,
unfortunately, the take rate isn't what we'd like it to be, but that's why we're doing things like this radio show to gain, expose it to folks. So
let me throw this curveball at you. Are you comfortable telling us how much these workers' compensation policies, how much the premiums are for these policies? They're not that much, though, are they?
Well, I'm not sure you have security clearance for that, Brad. But I told you I might have to kill you. So
again.
No, our national average premium, and it's annual, is $585 for no employees.
That's it?
Yes, it comes down to a few cents per unit per month. Now, board members think in assessment dollars. What's this going to do to assessment on a monthly basis? Right? It's pennies a month.
Right, because a lot of board members actually do think that their job is to keep assessments from increasing. I think that's not the whole picture. That's just a little slice of it. It's great that board members are able to do well in making negotiations with their insurance company so that they do get good deals with their premiums. But around $500 a year to get a workers' compensation policy, after they hear this case, then they're going to really know that it's important to get.
That seems cost-effective, right? To invest that portion of money for the insurance coverage?
Especially when we look at some of the numbers behind this Hyman case. But the thing is, it's not done out of making a decision not to cover. It's the lack of take rate is clearly out of lack of education of the buyer. So they're not being willful and saying, well, we don't need this. We've examined the loss activity. We understand the exposure, and we're going to say no. Because usually when our agents get the boards to that level where they understand the exposure and they understand how the coverage for $585 a year is going to take care of that massive exposure, they get the yes. It's just getting the boards to understand that there is this need in this exposure. So lack of take rate is really out of ignorance at this point.
Okay, before we get into the Hyman case, do you want to just throw out some ballpark numbers of possibly what some of the things that have been paid out because of this policy? So you can have a 500 and some change insurance policy, or you can just decide to cut a check for this amount. Is this how I'd interpret that?
Yep. And, we've had the program since 2008, and we've got 62,000 fell off the ladder, 25,000 volunteer fell and landed on his head, 24,000 maintenance worker fell, 15,000 fell, tripped down the stairs, 25,000. We told you about the golf cart injury. So we've had all kinds of things going on. They do happen. There's real losses, both to uninsured contractors and volunteers, and it's significant for the individual that's hurt and also for the association.
Covered losses. These are losses that have been covered.
Losses covered from our program, exactly.
Well, I know that everyone's just chomping at the bit for us to get back to break, but we've got to let our sponsors have their time. When we get back, we are going to continue to talk with Garth Leone about the Hyman case.
888-923-1380, 888-923-1380. Give us a call.
Having trouble understanding your community association's reserve study? Does your HOA's reserve study seem to be written in a strange language? Hi, I'm Robert Browning, owner of the Browning Reserve Group. At the Browning Reserve Group, we have been providing easy-to-understand reserve studies since 1999. We actually listen to our communities and help them plan for the future. Find us online at browningrg.com. That's browningrg.com, or toll free at 877-708-0600. That's 877-708-0600. Clarity from complexity, the Browning Reserve Group.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fussell. My company, Broadband Agreements, negotiates cable television and broadband right of entry, access, and compensation agreements for your communities. At Broadband Agreements, we offer a free review of all agreements with a signed letter of authorization. Broadband Agreements will improve your community's income and or savings, or you don't pay us a dime. Visit us at broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. Or call me, Morgan Fussell, directly at 916-939-5026. That's 916-939-5026. Broadband Agreements online at broadbandagreements.com or 916-939-5026.
Did you see the story about the Homeowners Association? I wonder what their residents think.
I don't know, but I love my condominium association. The place looks great and is well managed, and our property values are increasing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Community Associations Institute, CAI, has helped us build a great community. They have tools for safeguarding our investment, including education for our board and professional training for our manager. Just visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Okay, responsiblecommunities.com.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Hey, we're back, the Saturday HOA Brunch, and we have a great guest today, Mr. Garth Leone. We are excited to get into the Hyman case, but we're also trying to shine the spotlight today on some of our sponsors and just give them an extra little
We want to thank Omni Community Association Management, LLC. Omni is one of the premier community management companies in Northern California, Northern Nevada areas. Dating back to 1996, they understand what it takes to maintain great community associations. More than 70 associations and over 10,000 owners depend on Omni.
That's great. And they have a trade show going on today that we're fortunate to be a part of. And a lot of our sponsors and friends are there with over 80 board members getting some education. Bianna, you wanted to thank someone else?
Yes, I would like to thank Broadband Agreements by MFC. Broadband Agreements by MFC is a division of Morgan Fussell Consulting, Inc., and they represent apartment owners, homeowner associations, mobile home parks, and legal counsel as their advocate and expert when negotiating with telecommunications service providers. Morgan leverages his 30-plus years of industry experience and connections to obtain the best offers for your evaluation. So if you need to contract for some new broadband agreements, contact Morgan.
Hey, we got the question on the text line. Which
I wondered what that red phone was sitting over there.
I know.
Like the bat phone, the secret bat phone, I think.
This is probably a good question that'll just deliver a little bit more insight when we get into the Hyman case. But the question was, and we'll let this person remain anonymous, ask Garth if they need a volunteer's endorsement
Tell us what an endorsement is, first of all, please.
An endorsement just changes the conditions of the policy. It's an adding or subtracting coverage. Pretty simple, straightforward tool used for 150 years or so. And that was probably one of my agents on the secret text line saying, make sure that you remind the audience that not all insurance products in this space are created equal. And you indeed do need a what's called a voluntary compensation endorsement. And the way it works, most states say volunteers are not subject to the act unless they're a volunteer firefighter, EMC or EMT service, government level service. But they allow you to treat a volunteer as though they're a paid employee under the Act by endorsing them onto the policy with the voluntary compensation endorsement. So the one that we use is very specific. We wrote it specifically for community associations. Basically, you're calling out who fits the definition of an employee under one of these workers' compensation policies by that voluntary compensation endorsement. And ours reads, any board member, volunteer working for the association in an official capacity for which a license or specific training is not required, and it's by the motion of a board of directors. So basically anybody. They don't have to be a resident. They can be a tenant that is volunteered on the Saturday cleanup committee. If that person is injured and it's an official function of the community association, it's a work-related injury, and that's how we're going to pay it.
And Garth, you were telling us that there are some companies out there that won't cover that. So
That's
what's
correct.
the difference between your company and those?
Most states, there's the state fund and us. That's who writes this for community associations. And typically the state fund does not want any part of covering volunteers because they don't understand the exposure. And they feel like other nonprofits that have massive pools of volunteers like Habitat for Humanity, that's a huge exposure for which you're not getting any premium basis for. The premium basis in workers' compensation is based on the payroll. If you're a volunteer, there's zero payroll, so you don't get any premium. So most carriers are not real high on the idea of adding a volunteer for which you're not getting paid. I think the cost of our product kind of speaks to the frequency with which we have these claims. It is relatively inexpensive. The problem is the severity.
Oh, yes.
Great. All right, so let's do
you.
it. We've kept the listener on the edge of their seat. Hyman, the Hyman case?
Hyman case. Garth, take it away. Tell us the facts of this interesting case.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but I do stay at Holiday Inn Express on
We have a
occasion,
disclaimer, so that's okay, Garth.
And I'm here with Brad, so he's going to kick me in the shins if I get anything wrong. I'm sure of it. But basically, this Hyman case, Montana Villas Homeowners Association was managed by a company called Pegasus Management. Hyman was a sole proprietor of Pegasus Management. They were replacing rain gutters at the association, and they hired a contractor. Who's they? That's the question. But they hired a contractor named Rudy to install these rain gutters, and Aguilera was the employee of Rudy. On the first day of the job, Aguilera was severely and permanently injured. He hit a high power line with a piece of rain gutter, and it did not end well. Okay. Initially claimed 90%, he was ruled 90% disabled. He claimed 100% disability. That's only important in terms of whether or not he's going back to work. But the initial ruling of the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, because Hyman did not have coverage for this employee, was that the manager, let me repeat that, the manager.
The community association manager.
Not the association, the community association manager.
They tried to put her through the ringer, let me guess.
They did. They said he was solely responsible for this injury under the Act. So again, this comp board is looking at the requirements of the Act. There's not coverage available. They're looking at who's responsible for this, who has to pay for this injured employee. They pinned it on the manager, Hyman. So the case is really about the manager suing the decision of the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board and basically saying, hey, I was just the trigger man. It's a community association. I don't have any authority. I just implemented a decision of the board of directors. Okay, and that's kind of where the case goes from there.
Right. So you have the community association. The community association buildings needed new gutters. The community association had their manager go retain a contractor, Ruby. Ruby, the contractor, uninsured. That might have had something to do with this case. You know what they say? They say that bad facts make bad law. Well, this case is bad facts. It makes a law that's been around since 2007. So it's the law of the land. And so then you had the fellow, Aguilera, he gets injured, severely injured, and of course he's going to claim he needs to be compensated from someone. Apparently Ruby had no money. He couldn't go after Ruby. the uninsured contractor. So where's he going to go? The deep pockets. Deep pockets are the association management company. And one thing that you find interesting, Garth, was that the court, they really pointed the finger at the management company here. And like you said, the management company is just a trigger man because the board of directors says, oh, shoot, we need new gutters. We're going to go retain a contractor, manager, go out and do the work for us. Go ahead and hire us.
That's right. And it was the appeals board basically looked and said, well, who's next in line? The contracting party is the person that hired the guy. So if the contractor does have insurance, surely it's the person that hired the guy that's responsible for this injury. And since the manager, quote unquote, hired the guy, then that's where it ended up. And Hyman, I think, was right, saying, I'm just the trigger man. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm the trigger man. I'm just the trigger man. I love that sound effect. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm just the trigger man, and I really had nothing to do with it. And the interesting thing, Brad, and you can get, I'll set this up for you to talk about, but I thought it was really interesting the way the appeals court came down, and they didn't really reverse what the workers' comp board did, but they basically said it's a three-way tie for last place. It's not just the manager. So maybe you can get into that for us.
Excellent. Yeah. So what the court was saying is, they tweaked the decision of the Workers' Compensation Appeal Board, and they used the term joint and several liability. This is, every board member should know about this. Joint and several liability. And Vianna, chime in when you want. But this is when you have multiple defendants. And how does it work, Vianna?
So basically, what that theory of liability says is that basically, if you have multiple dependents, they're all jointly liable for the loss suffered, and they're severally liable. Severally means that they're all independently liable for the entire portion as well. So basically, if you can't recover from one, you can go to any other one of the defendants and try to recover from them.
Right. It's not allocated in some percentage between the defendants, between the association and the management company. Here, in this case, the court said that Ruby and Pegasus were dual employers of Aguilera and are jointly and severally liable for workers' compensation under the Labor Code. So, again, Pegasus was, in this case, was the management company. And so here they are. They're, like you said, they're going after the management company when the association was the one that really was one that benefited from the contract.
Yeah, and that joint and severable between the management company and the hiring party. And the thing that I found interesting is they left the association off of that hiring decision. The joint and severable liability came in because they said the agency and principal relationship drew the association in. Right? The agent's working on behalf of the principal. So
bingo. Right. So so to bring it all together closed, what you have is the court said first Ruby and Pegasus were dual employers. Didn't really make sense, as we know. And then they said, well, we're going to hold that Ruby, the contractor, is jointly and severally liable with Pegasus, the management company, and the association is also liable as Pegasus principal, with this principal agent responsibility. This is why association management contracts are almost all the same, where they have to have the management company indemnify the association for the decisions of the board of directors, right?
Yep, and they should start. This case proves management companies should start to require that their customers carry an if any policy. We'll get into the numbers. I guess we're going to break here, huh?
Yeah, we're going to get ready to go to break. You guys lost me when you said Pegasus. I started thinking of Greek mythology. So when we get back from the break, we're going to brush up the Hyman case. We're going to kind of just...
We'll talk about some of the numbers that make this thing frightening.
Right. We're going to just scare the listeners. And then we're going to have Garth make a couple of announcements about some things he has potentially going on in the near future. So we're excited for you to join us with the fourth quarter. And we'll be back.
Don't go away.
Have you ever heard of the saying, a person's home is their castle? Of course you have. But sometimes a construction defect can turn your castle into a catastrophe. If this happens to you, you need proper and professional representation. You need Angius&Terry, LLP. For over 30 years, the attorneys at Angius&Terry have been effectively serving homeowners and community associations, recovering more than $500 million on behalf of their clients. Angius&Terry strives to ensure that your construction defect claims are prosecuted in an aggressive and cost-effective manner. Angius&Terry will also continue to work with homeowners and community associations after the construction defect claims are concluded to make sure that the money received from builders is spent wisely and that your interests are protected during the repair process. Don't let a construction defect turn your castle into a catastrophe. Call Angius&Terry LLP today at 916-567-1400. That's 916-567-1400. Online at angius-terry.com. Angius&Terry LLP.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fussell. My company, Broadband Agreements, negotiates cable television and broadband right of entry, access, and compensation agreements for your communities. At Broadband Agreements, we offer a free review of all agreements with a signed letter of authorization. Broadband Agreements will improve your community's income and/or savings, or you don't pay us a dime. Visit us at broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. Or call me, Morgan Fussell, directly at 916-939-5026. That's 916-939-5026. Broadband Agreements online at broadbandagreements.com or 916-939-5026.
The challenges presented by today's economy and rebounding housing market is forcing many homeowners association boards of directors to operate their HOAs more like a business. It's a balancing act of trying to stay solvent and still provide homeowners with quality amenities and services. One of the main challenges HOA boards are facing is attempting to recover unpaid HOA fees owed by delinquent homeowners. Collection efforts are often very time-consuming. If you want to get the HOA fees collection monkey off of your back, call ATC Assessment Collection Group. ATC is an attorney-supervised collection company, providing collection and foreclosure services to HOAs in both California and Nevada's most recognizable communities. Get back to what you actually volunteered to do as an HOA board member. Effectively oversee your community. Call ATC today at 916-641-1410. That's 916-641-1410. Online at atcacg.com. That's atcacg.com. ATC Assessment Collection Group.
This is AM 1380. The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry LLP. And now your hosts Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Hey, we're back. We're excited because we still have Garth Leone in studio, Brad Epstein, Biana Barbu, and the legend Frank Jolly on the sticks in the back. Great job so far today, Frank. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Frank.
And we are going to get into the frightening numbers, right? In the Hyman case?
Yeah, so this case in the end is probably going to be in the neighborhood of $8 to $12 million.
Cha-ching!
That's with an M. And the interesting thing is, cases like this, under the Act, you're just subject to whatever is owed to this individual. And there's 4 elements that are owed: medical, physical rehabilitation, occupational rehabilitation, and lost wage. And there's no cap on it. And things like GL, if I'm a business owner that has a $2 million policy and somebody slips and falls on my premises, I'm guessing the plaintiff's attorney is going to say that's a $1.9 million loss. Now, if the same slip and fall happens and I happen to have a $15 million umbrella for $16 million in total coverage, I'm guessing that's a $15.9 million loss. Is that right, Brad?
Wow. What do you think about attorneys? Oh, my gosh.
I love attorneys. You kidding me? They keep us in business. We're the only reason they exist.
Yeah, exactly. Hand in hand. No kidding. Yeah, so the general liability policy, we cannot have a show without mentioning the Davis-Sterling Act. The Davis-Sterling Act provides for excellent protections for our volunteer board members. Civil Code Section 5800. This is the Civil Code section that provides for limitation of director and officer liability. This provides that boards of directors will be personally liability-free above their insurance policy if they go ahead and they perform their work within the scope of their duties, in good faith, they're not willful, wanton, or grossly negligent, and, in particular, are subject to today insurance. They have a general liability policy if they're an association that is 100 or fewer units, homes, lots, then it's a $500,000 policy. If more than 100 homes, they need to get a $1 million insurance policy. So there's this general liability policy, and of course, board members are going to come to you, Garth Leone, and they're going to say, hey, we already have insurance. We have the general liability policy. So what the heck? Why do we need to have a workers' compensation policy too?
Yeah, so both an injury to a volunteer and this injury like the Hyman case, that is a frequently asked question. Won't our GL step up and pay that, GL being general liability? And the answer is no, because general liability has a specific exclusion for bodily injury to an employee. And the reason they have that exclusion is there's this whole separate line of coverage called workers' compensation where this is supposed to reside. So these kinds of injuries, the injuries to the volunteers that are work-related, the injury to something like this Hyman case, will not be paid on the general liability policy.
Right. So again, it's two distinct things. We want to make sure that all our volunteer board members know that their liability risk is really, really small, infinitesimally small, as long as you comply with your, what kind of duty is that, Jonathan?
Fiduciary duty. But could he have insured himself from the risk? I guess is the question.
He being who?
He being who, Jonathan?
Brad from the risk of the show. I think he. Is there
Brad from the risk of Garth's
for
suit against me?
Radio professional liability. Is that what you're asking? I'm not aware of that product, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
We'll get back to you on that one.
All right. Well, Garth, that was, a ton of information for the listenership to absorb. But what we're also excited to hear about, with all of your experience and being recognized in the industry since 1992, you're an author now, too?
I am. You're hearing it here first, and I've made a commitment as part of my rider with this show that I'm going to reveal my best-selling book.
What's
soon
that?
to be best-selling book
soon to
on
be
this
best-selling.
radio. This will be the first stop of my
fantastic.
book tour. How's that sound, guys? Yeah. So I wrote something called the Team Approach, and it's what I call a performance infrastructure, and I'm sort of taking that as a general thought and applying it to specific industries. So anything from a sales metric to personal performance, anything in improving your health and fitness. The Team Approach basically talks about that, and we're going to do a bunch of stuff around community associations and how to sort of be a better member of the industry, both from the volunteer homeowner, the volunteer board member, the vendors, the service providers that are involved in it. So look for that, and we'll have some fun with that.
Well,
over the
this isn't
year.
the first time, though, because you were involved in writing like a board member boot camp. It was in your biography.
Yeah, I did actually.
When was that?
It was a
couple years ago.
In the 1800s, I think, is when Larry and I got
gray
together.
hair now.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Christ did wear sandals when we wrote that. So no, Larry, our prior caller, he and I actually authored that together for Echo. So I've been a part of sort of helping the education piece for a long time. I love it. I got a passion for it, so I'm excited about it.
What's the name of your book? Where can people get the book? Is it a quick read? Is it a tome? Tell us a little bit more.
It's not published yet, but when it's published, it'll be sold maybe even exclusively for the first month on the #1 talk show within community association.
We'll put a link on the website because we
that'll
actually
be awesome.
Saturday HOA Brunch.
It's going to be called the Team Approach, and I do have some workshops teaching around the content now as I'm working on the book. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can do so.
If you're wondering who's entertaining us today, it's Garth Leone with Community Association Solutions Insurance. Thank you, Garth. Risk avoidance versus risk management. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that there's a sense that we need to try to avoid risk in community associations. Something like this, using volunteers, I'm all for it. I think the goodwill that you get out of the use of volunteers offsets the risk, especially when transferring that risk to a workers' compensation policy can be done so affordably at $500 a year, $600 a year. So
what you're saying is it makes sense for community association board of directors to have committees do different things because they can get a workers' compensation policy that will cover everyone is complying with their fiduciary duty, not doing things that are crazy outside their scope.
Absolutely, and every committee should have a charter. Every position should have a job description, and if you do that, and then you cover you mitigate or manage the risk or transfer the risk associated with those people doing work for the community, it's a win-win for everybody.
Wow, what a great show today, right? I think you would agree, Counselor?
Absolutely. Good information for boards of directors. We don't want board of directors thinking that they're going to walk out there into the board meeting and be liable, so they have a lot of protections. However, if they are liable, then they should get the protection of a good insurance. Good insurance comes from those insurance agents and products that are specifically designed for community associations. Right, Garth?
That's right. And Guys, thanks again for having me. It's been a real pleasure and honor to be on the #1 talk show in community associations.
Excellent. And we're happy to have Vianna back. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Vianna.
I'm glad to be back.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And what are we going to do now? I think we're going to go back out and educate board members, right? We have to go to Rolf Crocker's Omni Trade Show at the Citrus Heights Community Center.
Right. Back to the trade show. Garth, thanks again for coming in today. And so if people want to contact you, they go through your different agents, right?
Yep, or they can reach me directly at 888-833-4158 and Garth at mgalive.com. I think that's on the bio on the page.
Awesome. Thanks for the calls. Everyone, thanks for listening. And I think we're on the calendar to come back and do this again next Saturday, right?
I think it's next Saturday, once again. Thanks, Garth.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.